Son, soon to be boss. Just last week I saw this wonderful setting in a Cialis commercial. Mercifully, the two tubs are not here. This is a wonderfully imaginative setting, sort of like a bar mitzvah at the Vatican. And I am delighted and relieved that the marquee has your names out there this afternoon, because I was so concerned that this event was being advertised by the billboard that says Animal Collective. So anyway, if tears were words, Christopher's mother would be up here talking for hours. But she has asked that she sit down there on her crate of Kleenex. Now, on this wonderful, life-changing occasion, 4 days after April Fool, and 3 months after Christopher's 40th birthday, the few words that I have to say are, finally, thank God. And that's from an atheist. And as such, I am more than delighted that this long overdue collaboration between Christopher and Annadelle is taking place in a theater rather than a church. Because statistics show that 65% of all people who marry in a church end up getting a divorce, while 25% of people who marry in a theater end up causing a divorce. Besides, I never thought the church's original odd couple, Adam and Eve, were half as entertaining or interesting as Neil Simon's Oscar and Felix, whom Mike is going to be marrying in Iowa next week. I have always loved the theater, but never more so than today. Because the theater, for some strange reason, has always played an extremely important part in my life. I was born in Toronto, and I came from a severely dysfunctional family long before it was popular. My father abandoned us when I was 5, and after literally thousands of unanswered prayers about having a whole family, I had to quit school when I was 15 and go to work in the Canadian National Railway shoveling coal. And after 16 tons in a couple of years, I saved up enough money to go to England to track down my father, and I found him. He was married again. He had a second wife, but he had neglected to divorce his first wife. He was into having wives, not children. So he disappeared forever again. Now there I am, stranded in England, with just a very few dollars in my pocket. So I end up auditioning at a British repertory company, the Castle Theatre in Farnham, Surrey. So for a few years, I was an itinerant actor, and the theater became my home and my church. And when I married Christopher's mother, I told her right off, because I had such two horrifying parents, I didn't know what kind of father I was going to be, so I didn't want to have a child. And I didn't want anything to interfere with my career. So for 3 years, there was no Christopher, and for 3 years, there was no career. And then in 1968, I was offered a game show to host. It was a very cruel show that would have paid me $1,750 a week. And I was broke, and we were living in this little apartment on Clinton Street. But I just couldn't do something cruel after the life I had led, so I turned it down. And I came home, and I told Sarita why I turned it down. And tears started gushing out of her eyes. And she said, that means we can't have a baby. Well, I felt like a heel. And I said, you know, we tried it my way for 3 years, and nothing happened, so let's try it your way, okay? Well, 9 months later, January 29th, 1969, Sarita was out at the Valley Presbyterian Hospital about to give birth to Christopher. And magically, I was under contract as Merv Griffin's replacement. And you know, Sarita, lying in bed, was dreaming about her first child. And I was in the waiting room dreaming about my first guest. But Sarita was so high on amniotic fluid, she wanted to experience the whole natural childbirth thing. So she turned down drugs and pills, and she was to deliver without a sound, while in the bed next to her, the minister's wife was screaming at her doctor and her God that son of a bitch, goddamn husband of mine's never gonna lay his hands on me again. Now I'm out in the waiting room and the doctor comes out and the doctor says, "Mr. Barbour?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Your wife told me to tell you that she's just given birth to an 8-pound, 9-ounce host." Well, that is the wonderful, magnificent quality that my son has inherited. No matter what kind of stress he's under, he's always gracious, always thinking about others. And you know, I never got to replace Merv Griffin, but from the day he was born, he's been a joy as virtually a one-man talk show. And finally, a couple of thoughts about marriage. From my life experience, my age, I'm the Arizona speed limit, so you figure it out. But from my life experience, I have come to the conclusion that human beings are not reasoning creatures, because we are all heir to the same facts that come to us from our society, from the world we live in, and from the universe. And if we were reasoning creatures, we would take those facts and we would analyze them and digest them, and we would all come to the same conclusion. And we would all end up being Protestants or Catholics or Jews or Muslims or atheists or whatever, but mercifully we're not, because we only use our minds to justify our emotional experiences. When it comes to marriage, you cannot think a mate. You can only feel a mate. And you must do that as often as possible. Because when it's right, another proof that people aren't reasoning is the people whom they marry. You know, if it's right, it's not mental, it's chemical. And if you see them for the first time, as when I saw Christopher's mother, it was like I'd known her forever. And I've known her forever, and it's like it's the first time, okay? And finally, the most important thing about marriage is the ability to be able to talk to one another, because you have to know how to have engaging conversations when one of you has a headache. My wife and I have up in our kitchen a little sign that says, "Don't tell me my grandchildren are cats." Christopher has 2, Spock and Kirk, named after 2 TV characters. Annadelle has 1, Pokey, named after a porno star. Now, I don't know if after today that sign will ever come down, but I want you to know that Christopher's mother and I are so thrilled with the fact that those 3 cats after today will never have to go back to a single parent home. We love you.